This is going to be hopefully not too long of a video in which I just talk about my 5 favorite action cameras that I own. I have not tried every single action camera out there, but these are just, out of the 10 that I bought, these are my 5 favorite action cameras. Just going to go through them really quickly, and of course, most importantly, at the end of this video, in the next few clips, you're going to see some sample footage recorded with each one of these 5 cameras, so that you can just see for yourself what the footage looks like. Do you think any of it looks better than the other ones? I mean, maybe it wasn't sunny the whole time that we filmed, but that's also going to let you see maybe some cameras just don't film as well in cloudy weather, and that is certainly the case with these cheaper cameras, but some of them do really well, and maybe at similar prices. Some cameras you might find they look great, the footage looks great, some maybe not as great, and that's the thing with these cheap cameras. Sometimes you don't know until you buy one, but of course, if you're going to buy one, even the ones for $50 or less, it's still a little bit of money. Make sure you do your research and look for videos like this on YouTube, so that you won't be too surprised, and you'll kind of know what to expect. But obviously different settings, it might be sunny, it might be cloudy, it's just, footage might just look different. So just keep in mind that while these are clips that I recorded with these cameras, it's maybe not representative of how all footage will look in all locations at all times of the day with these particular cameras. But hope you enjoyed this video. I'm just going to talk about my 5 favorite cameras that I purchased. These are all less than $100, some of them more expensive than others, but let's just go through them really quickly. The Campark X25. Wow, what can I say? Of course, I'm just going to say a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to have the same experience that I did with these cameras. This is just really talking about my own personal experiences, my own opinions. I'm not going to tell you have to buy these. This is more like if you're just shopping around for action cameras and you're interested in some of the ones that I purchased and the prices and the experiences I've had. So again, if you don't want to hear me talk, feel free to skip to the next part of this video where we have some sample footage recorded with each one of these cameras. It'll be labeled. This is all 1080p 60 frames per second, so I'm not going to tell you, oh, this is one was recorded at 4K, this is 2.7K. This is all the footage I recorded with these 1080p 60 frames per second, my favorite video setting, a good combination of smooth video and good quality. And a lot of these cheap action cameras, even the ones that are maybe around $40, they'll still have a 1080p 60 frames per second video setting, most likely. But please do your research, okay, before buying any more of these. Okay, so the first one, what can I say about this camera? This is probably one of my favorites, the Campark X25, undoubtedly one of my favorites. I'm going to say what I purchased these cameras for, but keep in mind that prices do fluctuate, so I'm not going to guarantee that you're going to pay the same price that I did. I purchased this for less than $50, and wow, it doesn't have image stabilization, but I really like the resolution at 1080p 60 frames per second. It has distortion correction, so if you don't like the fisheye effect, you can certainly turn that off. Time-lapse, slow motion, all around, I really like the quality on this camera, both in darker and sunny weather. In my opinion, this is a great purchase, the Campark X25. I really like this camera a lot. Next one is actually not my favorite because I think in cloudy weather and darker weather, the video doesn't look that great. Again, that's my own personal opinion. The VanTop Moment for You advertises itself as recording 4K 30 frames per second, though to be perfectly honest, when I recorded at 4K, I found the video to be a little less smooth, a little bit more choppy, so I chose the 1080p 60 frames per second setting, which is what I usually do. Even though these cameras have higher resolutions, 1080p 60 frames per second I think is perfectly fine. I found that in lower lighting, when it was a little bit more cloudy, the quality didn't come out that great, but underwater, made a clip underwater and it looked fantastic. So maybe if you're thinking about submerging these underwater, this one did work for me underwater and it did not leak. So maybe think about that. This is a good camera, but it's not my favorite because of the filming quality and low lighting. But underwater it worked great, and maybe in sunny weather the camera probably looks, I mean, a lot of these cheaper cameras, they look much better in sunny weather sometimes. So another decent camera. Probably not just one of my favorites, but my favorite, the AEE Life Silver action camera. You're going to see some footage. It's actually, what's interesting about this camera is that, I mean, it doesn't look very special right now, but wait till I show you, it actually has kind of a glassy texture blocking the lens, very flat glass texture. So that means that you can actually wipe the dust, dirt away from the lens with your finger, not without a special, you don't have to have a special cloth, and it's still very clean. So there's no curvature here. It's not going to attract dust, attract dirt. If you wipe it with your finger, you can actually wipe it and it's still going to be nice and clean because it has this glass over the lens. Very, very cool in my opinion. So very sturdy, very durable, and has a cover here to protect your SIM card when you don't have the underwater housing on. So very cool, very, very portable, and it does not get dirty over the lens, which is super important, especially if you don't have the underwater housing on. That's the AEE Life Silver action camera. The next one we have is the Livo action camera SC500, which is actually discontinued. It was discontinued shortly after I purchased it, which means they stopped selling it on Amazon, I believe, because I couldn't find it anymore. So this camera is a little bit older, a few years older, I think maybe from 2017 or 2018, but I like the 1080p 60 frames per second quality here. So maybe you're not able to purchase it anymore, but I did like the time-lapse feature and the video feature here. I thought the pictures were also quite acceptable. Last but not least, the most expensive cheap action camera that I purchased for almost $90, maybe around $86, between $86 and $90, is the Campark X35 action camera. As you can see here, the X35. Lots and lots of features, including image stabilization. I found the quality to be good. 1080p 60 frames per second. We have the ability to turn off the fisheye effect. We also have slow motion, as I said, image stabilization, time-lapse feature. The photo feature actually didn't work for me. I don't think I was able to even take photos with this because I think the photo feature here for me was broken. I only tried it once, but the pictures didn't come out at all. But that doesn't matter. I bought this to make videos, not take pictures. So this one's a little bit more heavy, but it does have image stabilization, the ability to record in 4K, and I think maybe even a larger, more frames per second than 1080p, 60 frames per second, maybe more than that. I haven't checked, but this was almost $90. And it does have image stabilization, which is cool because the more expensive cameras will have some kind of stabilization feature. Maybe a little bit of a loss in quality, but nonetheless stabilized video. So all these were less than $100. These 5 action cameras, these are my 5 favorites that I purchased. The other ones are much cheaper and maybe not as good. So just keep in mind you will have a greater chance of having more features, better quality video if you pay more money, but not necessarily. That's why I encourage you to shop around, because for $50, for something like this, is very good, and you really just have to shop around, look at videos to see that it's very possible to buy something for $60 and for around $50 and have great quality video. But just keep in mind that not every $50 camera is the same. Just because this camera costs $50 and this camera costs $50 doesn't mean they're gonna have the same features and same video quality. Different manufacturers, different models. So it's all just really up to you to just do your research. And but the cool thing about these cameras is that they're very cheap, so it doesn't mean that if you don't like something it's necessarily a huge loss. A lot of these are maybe $50, $60. So those are my 5 favorite action cameras. The next part of this video is going to have some sample footage recorded with each of these 5 cameras. Thanks for watching this video, and have a nice day. Hello, this is a 1080p video test. 60 frames per second with the Campark X25 action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the Campark X25 action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the Campark X25 action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the Campark X25 action camera. Hello, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the VanTop Moment For You action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the VanTop Moment For You action camera. .1080p video test at 60 frames per second. The VanTop Moment For You action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. AEE light silver action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the AEE light silver action camera. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Test 60 frames per second. .1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Hello, this is a 1080p 60 frames per second video test with the Livo action camera. (1080p 60 frames per second with the Livo action camera. (1080p 60 frames per second. Livo action camera. (1080p 60 frames per second with the Livo action camera. (1080p video test, 60 frames per second. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Campark X35 action camera. (1080p video test, 60 frames per second. Campark X35 action camera. 1080p video test, 60 frames per second with the Campark X35 action camera.